Pause for a second and think about this. The Indiana Fever brought back Stephanie White as their savior, the hometown hero who was supposed to lead Caitlin Clark to a championship. 8 months later, and we're watching one of the biggest coaching disasters in WNBA history unfold right before our eyes. And folks, what happened last night might be the final straw that breaks the camel's back. Before we dive into this absolute mess, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button because we're covering all the drama surrounding your favorite WNBA teams. And trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Let me paint you a picture of what just went down. The Indiana Fever, a team with Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Kelsey Mitchell, just lost to the Dallas Wings at home. The Dallas Wings, a team that's been struggling all season, but here's where it gets absolutely insane. With 12 seconds left on the clock, Natasha Howard grabs a crucial rebound. Any coach worth their salt calls a timeout immediately, right? Wrong. Stephanie White stands there frozen like a deer in headlights while precious seconds tick away. 5 seconds, 6 seconds, 7 seconds. Finally, with 1.7 seconds left, she calls a timeout. 1.7 seconds. Are you kidding me? The post-game press conference was even worse. Instead of taking responsibility, White launched into what I can only describe as the greatest hits album of coaching excuses. She blamed the referees, she blamed injuries, she blamed everything except her own terrible decision-making. And the fans? They've had enough. One fan stood up and screamed, "I've had it up to here with you, Stephanie White. Zero accountability as always." But wait, it gets even more ridiculous. Remember when they hired White back in November 2024? Kelly Krauskopf said White would take this franchise to the next level. Well, she's taken them somewhere all right, straight into the ground. The Fever are now 18-15, and that's with one of the most talented rosters in the league. How do you mess that up? Let's talk about what's really happening here. When Stephanie White was hired, she came in with this reputation as a defensive mastermind, the woman who turned the Connecticut Sun into a defensive powerhouse. Fast forward to August 2025, and the Fever just gave up a 21-3 run at home to a team with 8 wins. They're playing a 3-2 zone defense against the Dallas Wings. A 3-2 zone. This isn't high school basketball, Stephanie. This is the WNBA. The rotation decisions are even more baffling. Chloe Bibby comes in during the first half and immediately catches fire. 3 consecutive three-pointers, 11 points in 12 minutes. She's literally saving the game single-handedly. And what does our genius coach do? Benches her for the entire second half. Meanwhile, Brianna Turner is getting minutes. Let me repeat that. Brianna Turner is getting significant playing time in a must-win game. You know things are bad when Turner is your solution. Here's what kills me the most. Stephanie White keeps talking about how all their point guards are injured. Yes, Caitlin Clark has been out with a groin injury. Yes, Sydney Colson tore her ACL. Yes, McDonald broke her foot. But guess what? That's why you're the coach. Your job is to adjust, to adapt, to find solutions. Not to stand at the podium and list excuses like you're reading a grocery list. And let's be real about something else. The way White threw her players under the bus after this loss was disgusting. She individually called out mistakes by Kelsey Mitchell, Aaliyah Boston, and Natasha Howard. But when asked about her own coaching decisions, suddenly she has amnesia. Not once, not a single time this season has she said, "I didn't have this team ready to play." Not once has she taken responsibility for a loss. The fans see right through it. Social media exploded after the game. One comment that went viral said, "Stephanie White is the worst coach in professional basketball, and it's not even close." Another fan wrote, "Fire her already. Can we please fire her already?" The patience has run out. The excuses have run dry. The team is falling apart. But here's the thing that nobody's talking about. This isn't just about one bad game or even one bad stretch. This is about a pattern that's been developing all season long. Remember when they lost to the Phoenix Mercury? White waited until the final 2 minutes to make any adjustments. Remember the game against the Los Angeles Sparks? She refused to call a timeout during a 15-0 run. Every single game, it's the same story. Poor game management, terrible rotations, and zero accountability. Let me tell you what really happened behind the scenes, because I've been digging into this all week. Sources close to the team are saying that there's growing frustration in the locker room. Players are reportedly confused by the constant lineup changes and the lack of consistent strategy. One source told me, and I quote, "Nobody knows what their role is from game to game. It's chaos." The Caitlin Clark situation makes everything 10 times worse. Here you have the most marketable player in WNBA history, the reigning Rookie of the Year, and she's been injured for most of the season. Now, I'm not saying White caused the injuries, but the way she's managed Clark's minutes when she has played has been questionable at best. Clark was averaging over 35 minutes per game early in the season, despite clearly not being fully healthy. That's on the coach. And speaking of Clark, let's talk about what happened when she was healthy enough to play. In the few games where Clark has been on the court this season, White's offensive system has been a complete disaster. They brought in White specifically because she was supposed to maximize Clark's talent. Instead, we're watching Clark stand in the corner while Kelsey Mitchell runs isolation plays. That's not what you brought Stephanie White here to do. The defensive problems are even more concerning. Last season, under Christie Sides, the Fever were bad on defense, but at least they were trying to improve. This year, they've actually gotten worse. They're allowing more points per 100 possessions than they did last year. How is that even possible with a supposed defensive guru as your head coach? Let's break down some numbers that will blow your mind. Since Stephanie White took over, the Fever are 3-11 in games decided by 5 points or less. 3-11! That's not bad luck. That's bad coaching. Those are the games where coaching matters most, where timeout usage, rotations, and play calling make the difference. And White has failed miserably in every single one of those areas. The comparison to her predecessor is devastating. Christie Sides was fired after taking the Fever to their first playoff appearance since 2016. She had a 20-20 record with a much less talented roster. White has a better team and worse results. Make it make sense. But wait, there's more. Remember when White was coaching the Connecticut Sun? She had DeWanna Bonner, Alyssa Thomas, and Brianna Jones, 3 All-Stars. And what did she do with them? 2 straight semifinal exits. No finals appearances, no championships. This is her track record, folks. She's a coach who looks good on paper, but can't deliver when it matters. The Austin Kelly situation is another red flag. Kelly has been filling in as acting head coach when White has been away for personal matters. And guess what? The team actually looked better under Kelly. They moved the ball better, the rotations made more sense, and the players seemed more engaged. What does that tell you? Here's something that will really make your blood boil. After the latest loss, White was asked directly about her timeout management. Her response? "I probably should have called it at the 3-second mark. Probably. This isn't amateur hour, Stephanie. This is professional basketball. You're being paid millions of dollars to make these decisions, and your response is probably. The injury excuse is getting old too. Yes, the Fever have had injuries. Welcome to professional sports. Every team deals with injuries. The Connecticut Sun are missing half their roster. The New York Liberty have been without key players. The difference is those teams have coaches who adjust and find ways to win. White just finds new excuses. Let me share something that a former WNBA coach told me off the record. They said, Stephanie White is a great basketball mind, but she overthinks everything. She'll have a simple solution staring her in the face, and she'll complicate it because she wants to prove she's the smartest person in the room. That quote explains everything we're seeing. The Chloe Bibby situation from last night is a perfect example. Bibby was hot. She was hitting everything. The team had momentum. Any other coach rides the hot hand. But White? She had to prove she knew better. She had to show everyone that she had some master plan. And it backfired spectacularly. The defensive schemes are another example of overthinking. Against the Dallas Wings, a team that struggles to shoot from outside, White played a zone defense that gave them wide open three-pointers. Why? Because she wanted to protect the paint against a team that doesn't even attack the paint effectively. It's coaching malpractice. And don't even get me started on the offensive sets. White has turned one of the most exciting young teams in the league into a boring, predictable offense. They run the same play over and over again, pick and roll at the top of the key. If that doesn't work, isolation for Mitchell. If that doesn't work, dump it to Boston in the post. There's no creativity, no movement, no flow. The players are trying their best to stay professional, but you can see the frustration. Kelsey Mitchell's body language has been terrible lately. Aaliyah Boston looks confused half the time. And when Caitlin Clark has been on the bench, she looks like she'd rather be anywhere else. This is not a happy team. Sophie Cunningham has been one of the few bright spots, and even she's being misused. Cunningham has been shooting 45% from three-point range over the last month. She's been their most consistent scorer. And yet, White continues to limit her minutes in favor of players who aren't performing. Make it make sense. The front office has to be watching this disaster unfold with serious concern. Kelly Krauskopf came back to the Fever specifically to build a championship team around Caitlin Clark. She hired Amber Cox as general manager. She brought in Stephanie White. And now the whole thing is falling apart. Krauskopf's reputation is on the line here. There are already whispers that if things don't improve dramatically, White could be on the hot seat before the season ends. That would be unprecedented in the WNBA, but these are unprecedented times. You can't waste a year of Caitlin Clark's career. You can't squander this roster. Something has to change. The upcoming schedule doesn't get any easier. They face the Connecticut Sun next week, then the Minnesota Lynx, then the Seattle Storm. These are all playoff teams, all well-coached teams. If White continues with the same approach, the Fever could be looking at a massive losing streak. What's even more frustrating is that the solutions are obvious. Play your hot players. Call timeouts when you need them. Take responsibility for losses. Develop a consistent rotation. Stop overthinking everything. It's not rocket science, but White seems incapable of doing these basic things. The comparison to what's happening with other young teams is stark. Look at the Dallas Wings with Paige Buchers. They have less talent than the Fever, but they're competitive every night because their coach has them prepared and organized. Look at the Golden State Valkyries in their expansion season. They're playing better team basketball than the Fever. Here's a stat that will blow your mind. The Fever have blown 12 double-digit leads this season. 12! That's not the players choking, that's coaching. That's not making adjustments when the other team makes a run. That's not calling timeouts to stop momentum. That's not having your team prepared for adversity. The timeout usage deserves its own investigation. White has left multiple timeouts unused in close games. She's called timeouts after the opposing team has already gone on a run instead of stopping it early. She's wasted timeouts in the first quarter and then not had them when she needed them late in games. It's coaching malpractice at its finest, and the post-game press conferences have become must-watch television for all the wrong reasons. White has mastered the art of saying nothing while talking for 10 minutes. She'll use coach speak like, "We need to execute better," or "We have to be more physical," without ever explaining what that actually means or how she plans to make it happen. The double standard she complained about with the referees is particularly rich. Yes, the officiating in the WNBA can be inconsistent. But you know what? Every team deals with it. The good coaches find ways to win despite bad calls. The bad coaches use it as an excuse for why they lost. Let's talk about player development, or the lack thereof. Aaliyah Boston was supposed to take a huge leap this season. Instead, she looks exactly the same as she did last year, maybe even worse. Her confidence seems shot. She's not aggressive. She's not demanding the ball. That's a coaching failure. Lexi Hull is another example. She showed flashes of brilliance last season. This year under White, she can barely get on the court. And when she does play, she looks lost because she has no idea what her role is supposed to be. One game, she's a three-point specialist. The next game, she's a defensive stopper. The game after that, she's riding the bench. The medical staff situation is another concern. How does a team have this many muscle injuries? Clark has had 4 separate muscle injuries this season after never missing a game in college. That's not normal. Either the training staff isn't doing their job, or White is pushing players too hard in practice. Either way, it falls on the head coach. Speaking of practice, multiple sources have told me that White's practices are chaotic. She'll spend an hour on a defensive scheme and then scrap it before the game. She'll install a new offensive set and then never run it in an actual game. Players don't know what to focus on because everything keeps changing. The contrast with her time at Connecticut is telling. With the Sun, she inherited a veteran team that basically coached itself. Alyssa Thomas, DeWanna Bonner, and Brianna Jones are all savvy veterans who know how to play. They didn't need heavy coaching, they just needed someone to manage personalities and call timeouts. Even then, White couldn't get them over the hump. Now with a young team that actually needs coaching, needs development, needs structure, White is completely out of her depth. She doesn't know how to teach. She doesn't know how to develop young players. She doesn't know how to build a culture. She only knows how to give excuses. The Stephanie White experience has been a complete disaster, and it's time for everyone to admit it. The Emperor has no clothes. The defensive guru can't coach defense. The hometown hero has become the hometown villain. The savior has become the problem. The question now is what happens next. Does Kelly Krauskopf have the courage to admit she made a mistake? Does she make a change before it's too late? Or does she double down and hope things magically improve? The clock is ticking, and Fever fans deserve better than what they're getting. Because here's the truth that nobody wants to say out loud. The Indiana Fever have a championship-caliber roster. They have the best young point guard in the league when healthy. They have a dominant post presence in Aaliyah Boston. They have an elite scorer in Kelsey Mitchell. They have role players like Sophie Cunningham who can contribute. They have everything except the one thing that matters most: a competent head coach. The sad part is that Stephanie White seems like a good person. She's intelligent, she knows basketball, she's a legend in Indiana, but being a good person doesn't make you a good coach. Being smart doesn't mean you can lead. Being a legend as a player doesn't translate to success on the sideline. What the Fever need is someone who can maximize the talent on this roster. Someone who can develop young players, someone who can make in-game adjustments, someone who can take responsibility, someone who can build a winning culture. Stephanie White has proven she's not that person. The final straw might have already broken. After last night's disaster, the noise is getting too loud to ignore. The fans are furious. The media is starting to turn. The players are losing faith. Something has to give, and it has to give soon. Because if it doesn't, if they continue down this path, they're going to waste not just this season, but potentially this entire era. You don't get many chances to build around a generational talent like Caitlin Clark. You don't get many opportunities to compete for championships. The Fever are squandering both. So what do you think? Has Stephanie White lost the locker room? Should the Fever make a coaching change? Is there any hope for this season? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more WNBA coverage. Because trust me, this story is far from over, and you're not going to want to miss what happens next.